Hey, what's good, y'all? So as I promised, here is the follow-up to that Earthling Ed video that I talked about a couple days ago. And here we're actually gonna hand him the mic, give him a moment to say his piece, because the truth is, the topic that he's talking about, he actually does have some very insightful takes on it, because it is something that is genuinely an issue, and it doesn't really have anything to do with veganism. It's actually the counter to veganism. It's the carnivore diet, which, people say what they will, and they say what they think about it all the time. But there are some influencers out there that are harmful in a different way that like some vegan influencers are. And then the carnivore space, they tell you that if you eat nothing but meat, it'll cure your cancer. Like they tell you crazy things like that, trust me. And the vast majority of it is not to be believed. And Earthling Ed has a few things to say about that. So let's get into it.
Did you know that if you eat 15 burger patties every single day without the burger bun or the vegetables, you could reverse amenorrhea, eczema, psoriasis, cystic acne, chronic bloat, brain fog, and even all PMS symptoms?
If this sounds like a load of hot bullshit to you, well, don't worry. That's because it is a load of hot bullshit. None of that she said is fundamentally true. Yes, and increasing how much meat you eat if you don't eat much already could potentially get you some nutrients that you're lacking that might help with maybe some of those things that she listed, especially like the brain fog one, because that's a common symptom that vegans have, because myelin sheath, B12, things like that, you don't really get so readily on a vegan diet, and a lot of people end up lacking those things, and then they get that brain fog symptom. And of course, yeah, eating 15 beef patties a day would probably help you with that, because you're going to get those much needed nutrients that you've been lacking that has been causing the brain fog. But other than that, this is garbage. And lady, who the fuck is eating 15 beef patties a day?
While you watch me eat 2 pounds worth of ground beef patties, I'm going to tell you about all the lies I found out about after eating meat again. Don't eat meat because it clogs arteries. Eat oatmeal for breakfast and a salad every day because fiber is essential. Don't drink raw milk because of deadly bacteria. Always swap butter for margarine if you don't want to die of a heart attack. Move more and eat less if you want to stay in shape. Eating too much meat will make you gassy and smelly. If you believe in any of these statements, then you've been fooled by the biggest scam of all, the food system. They can only make money off of sick people, not healthy people, and a patient cured is a customer lost.
The only one of those that was actually legitimately 100% probably a lie, maybe not 100%, but the like meat making you gassy thing, I don't even know people say that. If anything, it's plant diets that make you a little gassy because of the fiber tends to make you a bit gassy. But yeah, you shouldn't drink raw milk. That's true, don't do that. Eating meat, a lot of red meats, high cholesterol can clog arteries. Actually, cholesterol is one of the most common causes for clogged arteries, which is something that you're gonna get potentially when you're eating a shit ton of red meat all the time. Also, who the hell told you to eat oatmeal and salad every day? Like, who said that? I've never heard that in my life. Like, yeah, nobody said you should eat oatmeal every day. I mean, I can't imagine it being particularly harmful. I mean, unless, carbs are bad for you, then maybe don't. But seriously, what the heck? Where did this come from? Like, I'm very confused. Anyway, I'm not gonna comment too much on this. It's time to let vegan Jesus himself take the stand.
Now, the irony is that these people like to refer to themselves as free thinkers, which is another red flag term in my book. But then they fall for the most obvious misinformation and disinformation that is currently being disseminated within wellness spaces. The problem is these people are trapped under these heavy layers of cognitive biases and cognitive dissonance, and it is these more hidden psychological behavioral drivers which are truly shaping their worldview, not actual evidence. And what you find is these people will disregard hundreds, even thousands of high-quality studies, but then accept at face value what some random chiropractor on Instagram tells them. There are numerous influencers now on social media filming themselves eating sticks of butter and consuming copious amounts of red meat and drinking a lot of raw milk, even though doing so comes with obvious health risks. But then again, I guess the true enemy of independent thought and free thinking is just basic common sense.
And just like that, potatoes he had in the oven are overcooked, and he burned himself. He was cooking for a minute, and then he said the line, it's basic common sense. Dog, basic common sense is identifying the fact that you are an omnivore and then eating an omnivorous diet. That is basic common sense, you fucking noodle brain. I mean, you are definitely one to talk about basic common sense. Like I said, he did cook a little bit. He had some points to make where people do believe some things that some random chiropractor said. And a lot of people do ignore empirical evidence, which is also something that you're doing, Earthling Ed, ignoring empirical evidence, which shows and makes it very clear that humans are meant to consume an omnivorous diet. That's why we get certain nutrients from plants like fiber much more easily, and then we get other nutrients like proteins and B12, omega-3s, vitamin A and stuff like that from our meats. You can look at our teeth, you can look at our anatomy, we're talking like intestines and all that stuff, and it all demonstrates very clearly biologically we are omnivorous. Therefore, the common sense thing to do is eat an omnivorous diet, yet you teach people that they are all going to be perfectly healthy, disregarding the common sense, disregarding the empirical evidence, and just choosing to cut out 90% of what they eat. I'm talking about regular people, I'm not saying 90% is of what people eat in general is meat, but alas, cutting out a huge chunk of what people eat and then just eating vegan foods. Not very common sense in my book. Now he's also saying that there's thousands of well-documented research on healthy diets and stuff like that, in which case, of course, he is referring to vegan diets. Where? Show me the Carfax, dog, because I can't find shit that definitively states that a vegan diet is better than any other healthy omnivorous diet. Now, you can compare a vegan diet to an unhealthy omnivorous diet, which a lot of people do consume. So a really healthy, in quotations, which means you only eat whole foods and the best plants and all that stuff, which is what they usually compare, and then compare it to your typical junk that people are eating on a standard American diet. And yeah, it's gonna look like veganism is much healthier by those standards on the surface, because they never go deep into the actual issues involved in veganism and your average person deciding to be vegan, because a lot of those people don't last long and they stop doing it. There's not enough extensive research, and even the documents that do compare vegan diets to regular diets, they always come up at the end saying that they didn't really find a substantial difference in health. Which, again, this sort of thing, these in-depth things that I keep talking to you guys about, I will go into great detail with a more research-focused video sometime, hopefully this month, if I can find the energy for it. And that's where I know some of you guys probably have questions, you know, wanting to see the sources yourself, and I will bring forth all of that stuff, all my receipts and everything in a very, very detailed debunking veganism video. So make sure you subscribe for that. It will be coming soon. Now back to Earthling Assholes video.
I was craving a quick pick-me-up while walking the streets of New York, so I picked up my favorite energy bar, a stick of butter. There's no feeling quite like biting into cold butter, SPF-free in the city.
Yeah, I am gonna lie to you. I think Earthling Ed's about to go back in the kitchen and start cooking again with this one. Yeah, you don't even need my words. I think my facial expression says it all.
Now, one of the biggest drivers in terms of getting people into the modern wellness space has been the rise of anti-establishment thinking. And of course, this has become particularly prominent in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, there were, of course, a few drivers that existed before the pandemic that were bringing people into this space, and these drivers also exist now. And of course, one of the most prominent is Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop, and indeed celebrity endorsements in general. Now, Goop has become notorious for peddling pseudoscientific, harmful and unsubstantiated wellness products and concepts. Things like raw milk and also bee sting therapy.
Bee sting therapy. Yeah, that's the first I'm hearing of this. I didn't know that was a thing. I'm assuming it's gonna get better from here, right? It's not gonna get worse. I don't know. Let's see. Also, don't trust anything that Gwyneth Paltrow, whatever the fuck, tries to sell. You all remember what kind of things she's been trying to sell. If you know, you know. If you don't know, go find out, or don't. I don't care what you do.
Now, of course, Gwyneth Paltrow is not someone that we should be turning to for health advice. She's not a qualified voice within the health space. And what's scary on top of all of this is that even though Gwyneth is the face, the creator of this Goop empire, when she's asked questions about the evidence of the products that she is selling to people, the ideas that she's selling to people, she can't even answer simple questions.
Squatting when urinating strengthens the pelvic floor muscles, resulting in a flatter stomach and more satisfying life. Is that something that you believe in?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I've never read that before.
You got to subscribe to this website. That is true. That's actually on there.
God. The jade egg is an ancient Chinese practice where women insert the jade egg in their lady parts.
Right.
And to help tone the pelvic floor.
How does it help do that?
I don't know. I need to start my jade egg practice.
You've never been on this website before, have you? What are you doing in that office? So people will... You sell a lot of these?
We sell tons of them.
And if that wasn't bad enough, she also doesn't understand the ethical consequences of what she advocates for either.
It's actually a very ancient remedy for arthritis and inflammation and scar tissue, which is they sting you with a bee. And then if you have a bad scarring or you have inflammation, then apparently the bee sting has all these amazing healing properties. I just didn't think...
Don't bees die when they sting someone?
Oh. I don't know. I'm not a bee practitioner.
There is also a significant amount of cognitive dissonance which can be found within certain sections of the Western wellness space.
So considering he brought up the ethics concern and then used a clip of her, also again, don't listen to a word this woman says. She is not somebody you should be buying products from. She doesn't know jack shit. She doesn't care. She's here to make money and to take advantage of people that aren't smart enough to know better or to do any research on her products. Nothing. She doesn't even know what the research is on. She can't even, like Earthling Ed said, she can't even answer basic questions about like how these things she's claiming actually works. She doesn't know because there's no science or anything really behind any of this bull. I mean, I'll tell you about what she did before. But anyway, she was literally using her secretions as a candle scent. So yeah, take that with a grain of salt whenever she's trying to sell you something and saying that it does this. Do not believe anything she says. Anyway, back to Earthling Ed here though. He's over here talking about the bees now, which is interesting that he's concerned about the ethics of the bees. When I've already said this a million times before, they hate when people take bees honey, but they don't really care when billions of bees are shipped across seas and brought over here into the United States to pollinate millions of trees that they get their almonds from, their avocados from, even like apples and stuff. But that's fine, even though the bees are contributing to slave labor because they don't want animals to be enslaved or exploited. And this shows he let it slip that there's ethics concerns when it comes to bees, but that's okay because you're still gonna eat all of your soy and all of your fruits and nuts and stuff that can only get to you through the exploitation of bees. But that's fine, I don't care about that. But if she has a bee sting her for this therapy she believes in, it's all hell breaks loose. Now I'm not saying I think that's a good thing that she has bees sting her for some sort of therapy that doesn't work. That seems really stupid, but regardless, Earthling Ed is still being a hypocrite.
Because for many within these spaces, they will happily accept certain forms of, let's say, Chinese alternative medicine, especially those which are centered around herbs and plants. But they will also reject other forms of Chinese alternative medicine, particularly those around animals, like, let's say, shark fins or pangolin scales or bear bile. But why are these rejected? Well, it's to do with our cultural values and our sensibilities. The reason why people don't want to consume shark fins and pangolin scales and bear bile is because culturally it's not acceptable. And from a value perspective, we find it offensive because bear bile farming is grotesque and awful. And skinning animals or cutting their fins off for shark fins, these things are morally reprehensible and of course utterly disgusting, let alone not based in any actual evidence. But the problem is people within the Western wellness spaces will agree with everything I've just said about those examples. But then when it comes to examples of animal exploitation that they find morally permissible and culturally normal, like exploiting dairy cows for raw milk or animals for organs or bees for bee sting therapy, all of a sudden they have this huge amount of cognitive dissonance where they're happy to accept these things because these things don't offend their sensibilities, whereas these other things over here do. And all of a sudden you realize that the whole idea of wellness is just completely ridiculous in so many ways.
I will agree with one thing that Earthling Idiot says. Wellness is ridiculous in many, many, many ways. I don't think what he just talked about is, and I also don't think this is a wellness topic. I mean, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. And when he brings up certain practices practices that happen, you know, in other countries. Yeah, removing shark fins for remedies, bear bile, like, you know, a lot of other weird things. And like, yes, us people in the Western culture are repulsed by these things, because to us, like he said, he's right, it is a cultural thing. But he likes to chalk this up to being an issue, though, when it's not. There is no hypocrisy when your culture is accepting of certain things and another culture isn't. There's a divide between these cultures, and that's okay. You know, another thing in China and some other countries too, like, it's not uncommon for some people to eat some dogs. You know, food availability and what they have at their disposal is different than what we have, and how people perceive food can be different. I'll give an example, another one really. I'm not a fan of people eating octopus, because I think octopus are extremely intelligent, and I just feel like people in general should not eat them. I feel like their level of intelligence and sentience is so far above most other animals. I mean, if you guys seen what kind of things these octopi are capable of, it's really impressive stuff. And so, like, me personally, I don't like that people consume octopus, but again, I don't like tell people that they can. I don't try to stop people from doing, I don't protest, you know, octopus farming or whatever. But it's okay for societies to have cultural differences. There's I know vegans want everyone to have this hive mind mentality where everyone thinks and moves exactly the same way they do, but the rest of us are cool. We're good. We're happy with people having their own cultural differences. Just another thing, I mean, they won't eat certain animals, you know, in certain religions, right? I think Muslim people won't eat pig. That's a part of the religion, amongst other animals too, and that's fine. That's okay. It's not some kind of hypocrisy like he's trying to frame it as. Also, I do want to go into the shark thing a little bit more, of like why we disagree with it. People don't really eat shark. I mean, some people probably do, but it's not a common thing. Culturally, it's just across many cultures, it's not particularly common for people to eat sharks. But what they're doing when they're just, you know, taking the fins off the shark and that's it, they're not even like using it for a purpose that is beneficial to the society. Like an example where he tries to go into like the dairy industry and stuff, he's trying to tie it all into that. We're like, well, okay, with the dairy industry exploiting animals, well, the difference is it's not exploitation. These animals are domestic. We've had them for thousands of years. What we do in farming is literally no different than what a tiger does in the wild, killing its prey for food. We have just done it a more intelligent way because we don't have long claws and super powerful jaws and fangs and an easy way to hunt down prey without using technology. But that has been our evolutionary adaptation, and that's what we work with. That's the major difference between what he's comparing and obviously what goes on in meat and dairy industry in Western culture.
And what these people arbitrarily pick and choose is exactly that, arbitrary. And in the same way that we should reject Chinese alternative medicine that especially exploits animals, we should reject Western alternative medicine, which exploits animals as well. And as well as the term wellness being used misleadingly within the wellness space, the wellness space also misleadingly uses other words and phrases like ethical and sustainable and compassionate. Take this interview with Gwyneth where she talks about her daughter Apple and how it's great because her daughter Apple doesn't want to touch anything that's cruel to animals, which is nice because that ethos aligns with the products that they make at Goop. Now that's really funny because Goop currently sells a moisturizer that's made from goat milk, camel milk, and deer antlers, and a face mask that's made from fish skin. Wearing someone else's skin is obviously cruel, let alone weird. But then again, what do I know? Maybe Hannibal Lecter is actually an icon within the wellness community.
Bro, Earthling Ed is actually so funny, and he doesn't even know it. Like, he needs to stop taking himself so seriously and be like me, you know? I like what he said there. He was very serious about it, but it was a nice little joke, you know? A nice little breath of fresh air. I enjoyed that. It put a smile on my face. I giggled about it. But yeah. I get the concept. It is a weird concept if you really do think about it, you know? People like wearing an animal skin is a little bit of a weird concept, but it's again something that's embedded in our culture. Culture is culture. We've done this for so long, and obviously when we first started doing this many years ago, it was primarily for the purpose of keeping us warm, you know, in colder times of year and stuff like that, surviving winter. You know, we start, you know, incorporating fur too from animals' wool and all that stuff to keep us warm. That was for survival. And nowadays, while we may not necessarily need real leather, real wool, or whatever for that same survival purpose, it's more so for fashion. You know, obviously there are some practical purposes of high quality leather, like a motorcycle jacket or something, protect you from getting scraped up if you know, go flying off of your bike. And, you know, handbags and stuff like that for having high quality bags that don't use synthetic materials like plastics and stuff. It's better for the environment, more eco-friendly. Like, there are still practical purposes for using leather, for using wool, for all of that stuff. It's true, it is. It's, again, not necessarily leaning on the survival aspect of things, but we found more valuable purposes in the modern day. It's a modernized purpose. And also, like, you should think of it from this angle of where obviously the animals are already killed for meat, for food consumption, all of that stuff. Wouldn't you want everything to be used, everything that is reasonable to use to be used, so that that animal's life is valued as much as possible after death, you know? So wouldn't it be a massive waste to have, you know, the hide left over and just thrown out to decompose and have no purpose versus actually using it for something? That seems to be more eco-friendly, because if you're doing that, guess what you're not doing? You're not using synthetic materials that actually harm the environment significantly more. And while, like I said, the concept is a little odd, it's really not, in the sense that it's done for a practical purpose and it is for the betterment of humanity, and even environmentally, because the alternatives are not great. But anyway, that's all I really got to talk about today. There's more to Earthling Ed's video. It's a pretty lengthy video. I think it was like 30 minutes long or something. So we're kind of chipping away at it. We're probably going to do a part 3 to this to wrap it all up. But this is where we'll end for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, thanks for riding along. Till next time.